Let me tell you something that could change the way you live your life from this moment on. You don't owe everyone access to your world. Yet, so many of us walk around believing it's our duty to keep everyone happy. To answer every call. To keep showing up for people who stopped showing up for us long ago. We bend, we stretch, we pour ourselves out, until there's nothing left. But here's the truth your soul needs to hear today. You must stop giving away keys to people who keep breaking into your peace. Every single person you allow into your space has the power to influence your spirit. And some of us are exhausted, not because we're working too hard, but because we've surrounded ourselves with too many voices that do not come from God. There comes a moment in every journey when you have to be painfully, brutally honest about who is lifting you up and who is quietly holding you back. Some people aren't in your life because they love you. They're here because they love your light, your energy, your spirit, and they want to drain it. You know exactly who I'm talking about. The ones who only call when they need something. The ones who vanish when you're the one in need. The ones who smile when you fall and grow strangely silent when you rise. And still, we keep them close. We tell ourselves, but they've been in my life for so long. But here's the reality. Longevity does not equal loyalty. Some relationships have expired, yet we keep trying to reheat them and pretend they're fresh. Let me ask you this. What is it costing you to keep these people around? Your focus? Your peace? Your sleep? Your self-worth? Some of you are praying for peace while entertaining chaos. You're asking God to heal you, but you refuse to let go of the very thing that's hurting you. My friend, you cannot heal in the same environment that made you sick. Yes, letting go may feel like rejection. It may feel mean, but there's nothing cruel about choosing peace over poison. When Jesus walked this earth, he didn't waste his time convincing people of his value. He didn't chase after those who walked away. He knew his mission. He knew his purpose, and so must you. The right people for your life will never require you to shrink, compromise, or constantly prove yourself. They will honor your silence, respect your growth, and protect your boundaries. You see, access is sacred, and not everyone should have it. You wouldn't let a stranger walk into your home uninvited. So why do you let strangers walk into your mind, your heart, your soul without permission? Guard your space like it's holy ground, because it is. This life is not a popularity contest, it's a purpose-driven journey. And if you're surrounded by people who distract, discourage, or drain you, how can you ever become who God created you to be? Many of us have allowed emotional clutter to pile so high that we can't even hear God's voice anymore. He's been speaking, he's been calling, but the line is busy, because you've got people on the other end who were never meant to have your number in the first place. Maybe this is what your current season is all about. God calling you into silence so he can speak without interruption. Maybe he's asking you to create distance, not out of hate, but out of obedience, because what he's about to do in your life will require focus, clarity, and separation. You're not being rude, you're being real. You're not selfish, you're strategic. If the access someone has to you is costing you your joy, your calling, or your peace, then it's simply too expensive. Shut the door, block the number, turn off the noise, and never apologize for protecting your soul. You've carried too much for too long. You've said yes when your spirit was screaming no. You've tolerated what God told you to release. But now, it's time. Time to release everyone who no longer aligns with where you're going. Let them wonder, let them gossip, let them misunderstand. You owe them neither access, nor explanation, nor apology. There's a time to speak, and there's a time to be silent. Too many of us have wasted precious breath explaining ourselves to people who never wanted to understand us in the first place. Hear this clearly. Silence is not surrender. Silence is strategy. Silence is strength. It's the sign that you've stopped playing their game. You don't have to answer every accusation. You don't have to defend your name in every room. When people twist your truth or talk behind your back, the world may expect you to clap back. But you don't work for the world. You walk with God. And when you walk with God, you realize, not every battle is yours to fight. Some battles are beneath the purpose He's placed on your life. Silence is not weakness. Sometimes, it's the loudest statement you can make. When you stop replying to drama, when you stop chasing validation from people who don't value you, you're telling the world, I know who I am. and I know who walks with me. The enemy loves noise, chaos, confusion, endless arguments. But God speaks in stillness. He leads in peace. And sometimes, silence is your greatest weapon in a spiritual battle. It starves the enemy of the reaction he craves. It closes the door to petty distractions. And it opens the way for divine direction. Some of you have been carrying the heavy burden of needing to be understood, trying to fix the story. Repair broken ties, clear your name. But peace isn't found in being understood. Peace is found in knowing that God understands, that He sees. He knows your heart, even when others do not. Remember this. Even Jesus stood silent before His accusers. He didn't debate. He didn't retaliate. He didn't beg them to believe. And if the Son of God could choose silence over noise, maybe it's time we do the same. We just talked about how silence can be your greatest weapon. Now, let's go deeper into why it matters so much. Jesus never needed the approval of those who doubted Him. Why? Because He knew His assignment didn't require their validation. And the same truth applies to you. The path you're on will not always make sense to people who are still trapped in cycles you've already been freed from. When you start choosing peace over chaos, purpose over popularity, stillness over performance, people will look at you and say, "You've changed." And you know what? That's perfectly fine. You're not who you used to be, and you're not trying to go back. I believe some of you are in a season where God is calling you into silence. Not because you're losing, but because He's preparing you for victory. Sometimes, silence becomes the training ground for your next chapter. It's in this stillness that your faith grows deeper, your strength is renewed, and your vision becomes clear. In the quiet, God builds something in you that noise could never create. You may feel alone in this season. You may even feel forgotten. But let me remind you, God does His best work in the dark. Seeds don't grow in the spotlight. They grow underground, hidden, unseen. And when the time is right, what He planted in you will rise, not because you shouted the loudest, but because you were rooted the deepest. You don't need to be louder, you need to be still. You don't need to prove your worth, you need to protect your peace. And sometimes that means cutting off the noise, the arguments, the negativity, the endless distractions, not because you're weak, but because you've grown wise. Because you've learned that peace isn't found in having the last word, it's found in knowing the final word belongs to God. So, the next time someone tries to drag you into conflict, the next time you feel the urge to respond just to defend your name, pause, ask yourself, is this worth my peace? Is this worth my energy? Or is God calling me into silence so He can speak louder than I ever could? Let them talk, let them wonder, let them misjudge you. You stay focused, you stay grounded, you stay silent, not out of fear, but out of faith. Here's a truth most people don't want to face. If you're going to grow, if you're going to rise, if you're going to step into the fullness of what God has for you, you must accept that growth requires separation. You can't remain in the same place, with the same people, doing the same things, and expect your life to change. At some point, you have to walk away from what's familiar, from what's comfortable, even from what's popular, and step into the unknown with nothing but faith and obedience in your hands. And I know, that's not easy. We are creatures of connection. We love our circles. We cling to our history. We often mistake proximity for purpose, believing that just because someone has been close to us, they are meant to stay. But that's not always how God works. Some people were essential to your survival, but they were never meant to be part of your success. They helped you through a season, but now they're holding you back from the next one. And God is saying, it's time to move. Some of the hardest growth happens when God begins to prune your life. He cuts away people, habits, even opportunities, and yes, it hurts. It feels like loss, but it's not punishment, it's preparation. He's making room. He's removing what's been weighing you down so you can rise higher. Because what He's called you to carry, not everyone can handle. What He's placed inside you, not everyone can support. That's why you can't take everyone with you. That's why the crowd begins to thin when your calling becomes clearer. Think about Abraham. When God told him to go, He didn't hand him a map. He didn't give details. He simply said, "Leave your country, your people, your father's household, and go to the land I will show you." That's faith. That's separation. That's the beginning of legacy, walking away from comfort toward destiny. Some of you are hearing that same call right now. You feel it in your spirit. God has been nudging you, pulling you to step back, to distance yourself, to stop going where you used to go, to stop speaking the way you used to speak. And you're resisting it, not because you don't believe Him, but because separation feels like abandonment. You're afraid of being alone, afraid of being misunderstood. But hear me, when you're walking with God, you are never truly alone. Sometimes, the loneliness you feel is not isolation, it's elevation. God is setting you apart so He can set you above. Yes, it might feel like you're losing everything. Friends drift away, people stop calling, invitations stop coming. But that's okay. That's God trimming away the excess. That's His way of saying, this next chapter is too important to carry dead weight. He's not being cruel, He's being intentional. He's protecting your purpose. And here's the truth. Some people can't love the healed version of you because they only knew you when you were broken. They were comfortable with the version of you that doubted, settled, and tolerated disrespect. But now you've changed. You've grown. You've started valuing your peace, and that scares them. Let them be afraid. Let them talk. Let them walk away. Don't let anyone guilt you for growing. Don't let anyone shame you for choosing peace, for choosing purpose, for choosing obedience. You're not better than them. You're just in a different season. A season where you take your calling seriously. A season where there's no room for distractions. A season where you understand that closeness is not the same as covenant. God is calling you higher. And higher means fewer. It means discipline. It means silence. It means separation. Because if you truly want to hear His voice, you must turn down the volume of everything else. You must be willing to unplug. We just spoke about stepping away from what no longer serves your future. Now, let's talk about protecting your spirit once you do. You have to distance yourself from people who pull you away from God's presence. You must walk out of environments that choke your spirit. And you have to leave behind whatever no longer fits the future God is preparing for you. This is not the season to second-guess your growth. This is the season to embrace it, to lean fully into it, to trust that even when what God is doing feels like loss, it is, in reality, love. Because growth always comes with a cost. But the reward? Peace. The reward is clarity. The reward is walking in step with your Creator, unbothered, undistracted, and unshakable. Some of the most dangerous connections in your life aren't the ones that openly attack you. They're the ones that quietly drain you. Not loudly, not violently, but slowly, consistently, in ways that seem small at first but eventually leave you empty. I'm talking about the people who pull on your spirit but never pour into it. The ones who expect you to stand in the middle of their storms, yet vanish during yours. The ones who are always ready to take but never willing to give. And here's the truth. You have to stop calling that love. There's a kind of exhaustion no amount of sleep can fix. It's not your body, it's your soul. It's the heavy weight of always being there for everyone else while realizing no one is truly there for you. It's the burden of carrying relationships that only survive when you do all the work. And you keep telling yourself, maybe this time they'll show up. Maybe if I just try harder. Maybe if I give a little more. But the truth is, you're pouring from a cup that's already empty. And that, my friend, is not love. That's self-neglect. Some people are addicted to your kindness, not because they truly love you, but because they love what you do for them. They love the access. They love the support. They love that you're always available. But when you're the one in need, silence. When your heart is breaking, excuses. When you're climbing out of your own storm, nowhere to be found. Let's be clear. This kind of one-sided connection is not holy. That is not God's design. That is manipulation. Even Jesus, in all His compassion, did not heal every person He encountered. He didn't run Himself into exhaustion trying to save people who weren't ready. Yes, He loved deeply, but He also withdrew regularly. He served powerfully, but He also rested purposefully. And you must do the same. You cannot carry people who refuse to walk. You cannot rescue someone who insists on jumping back into the same fire, and you cannot sacrifice your peace to maintain a relationship that only survives when you suffer. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is step back, not out of anger, not out of revenge, but out of wisdom. Your peace is far too expensive to keep renting it out to people who don't value it. You've tried talking, you've tried serving, you've prayed, held on, and shown up, yet nothing changes. And maybe that's because God is trying to teach you something. Not everyone is assigned to your forever. Some people were meant only for your learning. And when the lesson is complete, the connection must end. I know it's not easy. I know your heart is big. You care deeply. You want to believe the best in people. But faith is not foolishness. Boundaries are not bitterness. Boundaries are wisdom. They define where you end and someone else begins. They protect your anointing, your focus, your joy. And if someone constantly crosses them, disrespects them, or ignores them, they're not confused. They're simply comfortable with you being uncomfortable. You were not created to be someone's emotional trash bin. You were not designed to endlessly fix broken people who have no desire to heal. There will come a time when God asks you to put the weight down. To stop explaining. To stop rescuing. To stop bleeding for people who won't even bandage your wounds. And when that moment comes, do not let guilt keep you stuck. Do not let history hold you hostage. You can love someone and still walk away. You can forgive someone and still say, I cannot do this anymore. Because peace is not just the absence of conflict, it is the presence of alignment. And if someone keeps pulling you out of alignment with who God called you to be, that's not love, that's sabotage. Protect your spirit, protect your energy. Stop letting people rent space in your life when all they do is leave it in ruins. You are not God. You are not their savior. You are not required to exhaust yourself just to prove your worth. The right people will never need constant convincing. They won't drain you. They'll walk beside you, not ride you like a lifeboat. And if the only reason someone stays connected to you is because of what you can do for them, then the moment you stop giving, they'll stop calling. And that, my friend, is your confirmation. That's when you thank God for the revelation, because when someone's absence brings you more peace than their presence ever did, you didn't lose a friend. You lost a weight. So, ghost the ones who only show up when it's convenient. Let them go without bitterness. Bless them in silence, but release them in strength. Because when you finally stop watering what refuses to grow, you make space for what God Himself has planted to flourish in your life. There comes a moment when silence is no longer weakness, it becomes wisdom. A moment when your absence speaks louder than your explanations ever could. Because once you've outgrown chaos, once you've matured beyond emotional games, you understand, peace is not something you stumble upon. It's something you guard with intention. And one of the most powerful ways to guard it is to stop explaining yourself to people who have already decided what they believe about you. Continuing from before, sometimes what you need is not another explanation, but silence, the kind that protects your soul. Because the truth is, some people don't seek understanding, they seek control. They don't ask to listen. They ask to corner you. They don't hear to respond. They hear to twist. And every time you try to justify, to clarify, to bare your heart, your reasons, your quiet moments, they take it and use it against you. Then you wonder, why'd I feel so drained? So anxious? Why does it feel like I can't win? Simply because you're still playing on a field God never called you to step onto. There is a sacred power in walking away quietly, not out of pettiness, not out of pride, but out of spiritual preservation. When you leave, not because you're angry, but because your spirit refuses to remain where honor is absent, where your worth is debated, where your name is dragged, that's when you stop showing up. Not to punish them, but to protect yourself. God never called you to beg to be seen. He never told you to fight for bare minimum respect. And He certainly never anointed you to stay where your presence is merely tolerated but never treasured. There is a difference between forgiveness and foolishness. Forgiveness sets your heart free. Foolishness keeps you chained to toxic cycles, disguised as loyalty. Sometimes the reason people keep poking at you is because they still have access to your number, your ear, your energy. As long as you respond, as long as you engage, they maintain influence. But when you go silent, when you pull away, when you let distance be your decision, they begin to realize they never had power, they only had proximity. You don't owe anyone an explanation. You don't need to post a statement. You don't have to gather a crowd to share your side. Sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is say nothing at all. Let them wonder. Let them misinterpret. Let them have their version of the story. Because truth is not always defended, it is revealed. You may say, "But I don't want to be misunderstood." I get it, I know that ache. But remember, even Jesus was misunderstood. He was accused, mocked, misjudged, and still he stayed on mission. He didn't chase down every rumor. He didn't gather his disciples to issue a public announcement. He kept walking, knowing the only voice that mattered was his Father's. That's what you must hold onto when your character is under attack. When your silence is mocked. When they say, "You've changed," and you know you have. Thank God you have. Thank God you don't react like you used to. Thank God you no longer crave validation the way you once did. That's not weakness. That's growth. That's spiritual maturity. When you walk with God, not everyone will understand your steps. And that's okay. Your calling was never a conference call. It was a private moment between you and your Creator. So stop inviting everyone into the sacred spaces of your transformation. Let them talk. Let them assume. You don't need to rewrite every narrative. You only need to stay in alignment. When the time comes, when the dust settles, the very people who doubted your silence will be humbled by your fruit. Because fruit doesn't argue, doesn't explain, it simply grows. And true growth is loud in the spirit, but quiet to the crowd. They might say you ghosted them. They might say you disappeared without a word. Let them, because sometimes disappearing from the wrong environment is the only way you can reappear in the right one. Sometimes God has to pull you away so He can pour into you. You cannot receive new wine while clinging to old wineskins. Trust that your silence is not emptiness. It's preparation. It's God rebuilding your strength, resetting your focus, reminding you that your peace is no longer up for negotiation. Let stillness speak. Let distance do the talking. And trust that the one who knows your heart will also guard your future. There's a kind of transformation that happens not in the spotlight, not before the crowd, but in the shadows, in the quiet. When you turn away from the noise and fix your eyes on the one who never left. That's when healing begins. That's when restoration takes root. And you realize, some people had to leave for you to return to God. He let them walk away, not because He abandoned you, but because you needed to hear Him clearly, without the static of voices that were never meant to be part of your future. As we touched on before, sometimes the shortest road back to peace is stepping away from all the noise, letting your mind and heart truly settle. And at times, the most deeply spiritual decision you'll ever make is to choose stillness, to be alone with your Creator. Not the kind of alone that feels empty and hollow. Because when you are alone with God, you are never truly alone. You are resting in the presence of the only one who truly knows you, who is never confused by your silence, never threatened by the boundaries you set, and never afraid of the wounds you carry. It's in that space that healing begins. Not healing from what people did, but from the false beliefs you unknowingly adopted because of what they did. You start to release the lies that you are too much or not enough. That love must hurt. That being needed is the same as being valued. And the deeper you go into God's presence, the weaker those lies become. There's something sacred about the wilderness season, that place where everything is stripped away, every distraction, every false attachment, every toxic tie. It's uncomfortable, even painful, but it's necessary, because it's in the wilderness that God reshapes your identity, not based on who left, what failed, or how they treated you, but on what He says about you. You see, healing is not just about moving on. It's about moving deeper, deeper into truth, deeper into grace, deeper into a love that doesn't depend on performance, doesn't flinch at your brokenness, and doesn't vanish when things get heavy. That kind of love doesn't come from people, it comes from God alone. And when you anchor your worth in Him, you stop chasing it in others. You stop waiting for a call that may never come. You stop checking your phone to see if anyone noticed your absence. Because suddenly, their silence doesn't matter as much as His presence. And that shift changes everything. God never needed your life to be full of people. He needed it to be full of Him. Sometimes, in His mercy, He will allow a season of isolation, not to punish you, but to purify you, to teach you how to stand on your own two spiritual feet. to remind you that your strength doesn't come from who applauds, who checks in, or who validates you, but from the one who created you. And when you've been through that refining fire, something inside you changes. You're no longer desperate for attention. You're no longer starving for affection to the point of losing yourself. Instead, you are content, you are calm, not because everything is perfect, but because you've finally found a peace that doesn't depend on people, a peace that cannot be shaken, a peace that surpasses all understanding. Some people will say you've changed. Let them. They don't know the price you paid to return to yourself, to your calling, to your God. They don't know the nights you cried, the prayers you whispered, the moments you nearly gave up but didn't. And that's okay. Not everyone will see your process, but the fruit will speak for itself. You may have walked away from some people, but you've walked straight into the arms of grace. And in that embrace, you've found what no human relationship could ever give you: identity, purpose, stability. Now, you can love from a place of overflow, not desperation. You can give without losing yourself. You can show up in strength because you've been filled by the source. So if you've been wondering whether it was worth it to step back, to go quiet, to ghost the noise, and return home to God, the answer is yes. Yes, it hurt. Yes, it was lonely. Yes, it felt like everything was falling apart. But sometimes, things have to fall apart, so your soul can finally fall into place.